Welcome back to part 3 of Cuss N Discuss on the Global Horse Network. We are talking about mental toughness. I am Dr. Nicole Detling of Headstrong Consulting. We have the host that you all know and love, Steve Kutie, and Lia Coryell, Paralympic and a world champion archer, talking with you about all kinds of stuff, mental toughness. But we left off last time talking about imagery or visualization, and I thought that was a really good discussion going into really what we're here to do, which is help this man deal with his issues, as he calls them.
Yep.
And injury. I mean, this guy's dealing with a big injury right now, and
I know, but that's another topic, right? Well, we got to figure out what goes on in my head.
Well, that's
right?
like,
that's the.
Yeah. Ain't nobody got time for that. Like,
that's a deep well, right?
I'm not even willing to take that one on. But.
I mean, one of the things is, like I said, I mean, we've known each other, from way back high school time, but trying to, I've been going through a funk, right, on the showing side of things. And it's not that I've lost the spark, right? It's not that I'm scared to show, right? It's none of those things, but it's the how do you get back to that level? You know what I mean? Because, like, you can cruise through in mediocrity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But there's a big difference between here and here. And, I'm having a little bit of that problem. We've got great customers, great horses. We got all those pieces put together, and I've just hit whatever that roadblock is, and then whether it's the spark or whatever it is, I don't know how to get back there, to where we need to be, right? And I think it's if you're training horses and you're riding, and you've been in this program long enough, right, where you do it for a living. Like, you fall in those traps, or you get in those ruts, and I just got to figure out how to really personally get out of that, to do myself justice, because I know I'm my own worst enemy.
Yep.
And I understand that I can shortchange myself, and I don't say any of this braggingly. I say it is because it's a concern, right, more than it is bragging. Is that I had a certain level of talent that let me get to a certain point, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And that level of talent was good enough that it allowed me to win and do lots of things, and then it's not like you just coast, but you get comfortable just being there, right? And you have to figure out what is that challenge to put it to the next step. And I think that's kind of where I'm at, because we've done a bunch of clinics.
Yep.
We've been on the road, we've shown horses for titles, we've had world champions and national champions. And when you're in that little segment of things, you operate differently than what I feel like I'm operating now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't know what that is, Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm shortchanging myself, and I guess inadvertently kind of shortchanging customers, if you look at it that way, because again, 90%, 95% is not 100%, and sometimes that 5 or 10% makes a huge difference,
right. Yeah, I want to bring out a couple of things that are really important that you said that I think listeners should really kind of hone in on. And then I want to come to you with some stuff, because I know you've got some great things to add here. But, a couple of things you said that I think that you can all relate to is that you are your own worst enemy. You are the one that's holding yourself back. And I bet everybody watching this can identify with that. Right? I'm the one who holds myself back. You're the one who holds yourself back. That is common. That is real. And then also the things that you're experiencing now with, like, this identity, almost an identity crisis of, this is how I saw myself, and that's not where I am now. That's real. And so those of you who, whether it's an injury or an early retirement you weren't expecting, or you're forced out for some way, in some way or another, whatever it is in life, that's a very real phenomenon that everyone goes through. So I just want you all to not think you're crazy. Don't think that you're the only person in the world. Like, honestly, we all experience this. And there are some things that you can do that would be really helpful to kind of get through that current level of difficulty and adversity that you have. It's probably just not things that you've necessarily thought about before, because you've never had to do it until now. And then you're in that situation, you're like, man, what do I do at this point? Yeah.
I think it creeps up on you. I mean, it slowly creeps up on you, right? I mean, because it wasn't like just one day. It was just one thing.
But it feels overnight.
Yeah.
But it feels overnight. All of a sudden, it feels like I am a completely different person in a completely different world, and I don't know how to be myself here, because I don't relate to this.
Right.
Yeah. But I think you've got some great stuff to contribute to this. And so I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit of your story and your adversity and how you see, like, how did you deal with some of the stuff you've had to deal with? So, I mean, if you paid attention, if you watched the first couple of episodes, you'll know that she wasn't always in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And has been through quite a few adversities and struggles, yet was a world champion literally in February of 2022, just a few months ago. And so what a great example of someone who's really pushed through some difficulties and adversities. So if you don't mind sharing some of that, how you did it.
Not at all. So, growing up, I was actually, people think, oh, you're this athlete. You grew up as an athlete. I was a foster kid in a very poverty-stricken, dysfunctional family. So I was never an athlete. That's why I joined the military right out of high school. And I thought that was going to be, my career. That's where I was going to make it. And it was in the early 90s, right before we headed over to Iraq and Kuwait, our unit got the first batch of anthrax vaccines. And almost all the women in the women's barracks went down. So they thought it was, meningitis, like something going on in the head. And it turns out that whatever was in that vaccine gave every single woman an autoimmune disease. It could have been lupus, MS, Parkinson's, ALS, really, really sick. And so I was medically discharged as a private. I'm the world's oldest private, at 20 years old. But I had to figure out who I was then. If I wasn't a soldier, then who am I next? So I, came home, went to college, married, had kids. And then about 7 years ago, the MS had been kind of progressing as we go. Bam, it hit me and I'm in the hospital. And they come in and they said, we're taking you off all therapies and all medications because you're done now. This is progressive. This is insurvivable. 7 years ago and I have 2 teenage kids. And I'm like, what? You will never walk again and tomorrow will never be better than today. So you need to get your affairs in order. And they sent me home in a wheelchair. I was devastated. Who am I? Who am I if I'm not that? If not that, then what's then, So I tried really hard not to die, because that's what they're predicting. And in not dying, I wasn't living either. And my kids have known their whole life that I have MS, that I would not live a long life. So they're like, what are you going to do? You can't just sit here and try not to die. So I was working at the university with the post 9/11 GI Bill kids coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. Because I was a vet. I was a baby vet, but they wanted me to be their leader. That was an identity. I've always been a teacher. But I'm like, you guys are like combat vets, and we had special forces, and I'm like, you want me to be the student veteran leader? I'm a mom, with MS, and I'm in a wheelchair, and they're like, yeah, we want you to do it. So that became my identity as the leader and their advocate. That was life-changing for me right there. But I still introduced myself as people would say, well, tell me something about yourself. And I'd say, oh, my name's Lia. I have MS. Like I had to, justify why I felt like I didn't look like other people or act like other people. And we went to an adaptive sports camp, and that's how I actually found archery, because I'm not a wheelchair basketball player or any of that. But the reason I was recruited for the USA para archery team was not because I was an archer, and it wasn't because I was an athlete. It was because I was the most impaired, because I was so messed up and they had a lower level slot. Well, when I figured that out, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm just starting to figure out what to do with my life now. But my coach at the time said, Lia, you can use this opportunity for triumph or tragedy. You can stay in your tragedy and just keep waiting to die. Or you can take this opportunity, this platform, and change people's lives. So what are you going to do? What's going to be my new identity? And when I had when I got this identity as an athlete, as an adaptive athlete, life changing. Did it change anything, Emma? Did anybody else care that Lia Coryell was not just an MMSer anymore? She was an athlete. So when I meet people ever since that day, I never tell them I have MS. And I don't even explain why I'm in a wheelchair, because it's irrelevant. The things I'm doing to change the world and to make it a better place for people that have struggles, that's an identity. So sometimes when I compete in a sport like you, it's not even about me. It's about the little girl that I met at the archery shop that said, I've never met anybody in a wheelchair like mine that can shoot a bow. Yes, sweetheart, you can do anything you want. Also, level 4 archery coach. The only level 4 archery coach in the world that's in a wheelchair. I could go anywhere in the world and coach an Olympic team. I have no desire to do that, but I wanted to prove it could be done. And I could see that for you too, because you have all these years of experience, maybe it's time to, like at your clinics, to share that it's about your legacy, about, what you leave behind, because none of us are going to be here forever.
Right.
Surviving life is insurvivable. So what are we going to do about new meaning, new identity?
Right.
That might bring your spark back, even your kids.
Well, I mean, I always say what's funny is because, with what we do with the anti-gimmick horsemanship deal, because it's different than what a lot of people do. But I said, the one who's going to benefit the most is going to be the kids, right? Because the genius of it is, will be on them, not me, right? Because right now, you're paddling up the stream, right? Trying to prove this is how the stuff is and put all those pieces together.
Yes.
And so the beauty will come after I'm dead.
Yes.
Unless neither of mine ride, then it'll just be lost.
Yeah, right.
Not necessarily,
but-
because all the people you're influencing with things like this, right? This is going to continue to live on long after you're gone, and you never know who that's going to influence. But coming back to this tragedy versus triumph idea, how are you viewing your current situation? And I'm going to take it back to what I talked about in one of the previous, I think it was part 2 of this, I'm not sure, maybe it was part 1, but embracing the suck, but not getting stuck in the suck.
Right.
Like what you're going through right now sucks. Injury sucks. It is absolutely horrendous, and that's probably the nicest appropriate word that I can say right now is that it sucks.
Right.
And so acknowledge that. You don't have to try to pretend like you're fine. You don't have to try to pretend like it doesn't suck because
That's
it
exhausting.
does.
Well, but I think, a lot of whatever this funk is, right, is prior to, Like,
Exactly,
it's been, it's been there. So, I don't know, maybe it's just stuff compounded.
Maybe.
I don't know what it is, but yeah.
That's certainly
it's
possible. But the idea is you can embrace the suck and say, I don't like where I currently am. You don't have to like your injury.
Right.
You don't have to like that you're walking around in a boot. You can't ride the way you want to, but you can't get stuck in that.
Well, let me ask you this, okay? Is that, I know we talked earlier before we started filming, right? And we were talking about like with racing bikes and the the fact of like why I did it, right? But it was the for me, it was not necessarily the winning, right, or the things that went with it. It was about the suffering,
He
right?
enjoys that.
And so I wonder, because again, right, not that I'm gone down the psychological hole, right, but I have to make myself think of these things because again, I'm tired of whatever this funk is, right? Is it that that I'm thinking that maybe the thing is that because the struggling in the horse biz and these other things were for the fact of that I've gotten comfortable suffering, right? That it's not that big of an issue, right? Where to more people it would probably be a bigger issue, right? And I don't say it in a bad way, but that. And then the other thing that I thought about was there was a quote that was in a song or a lyric from a song, right? And the guy was talking about it's not being scared of success, but being scared of what success brings, right? And I know we talked about it earlier, right? Is that I'm me for the clinics and I'm me for showing and I'm me for doing all these things, but that's not the me. The me is not the people person that goes to parties and hangs out with people and introduces myself. Like I'm happy to be just alone and doing my thing because I like to ride bikes and I like to ride horses, but I don't need other people, right? So now having gone down these rabbit holes with over this last year, 6 months, whatever it is, trying to figure out what my issue is, right, with training. I can still train, I can still show, I can still do all those things, right? But what is it for the next the next step, right? Like I know, trainer friends of mine, right? Their big goal is, I want to win the futurity, right? Or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And that's not necessarily not been my goal, but has not been my primary goal because I just like the stuff that goes with it, right? I'm not trying to get to a specific spot, So I don't know if, am I just screwing myself over, right? As that's what I've been doing my entire life. And I've got to the point now that, it just finally bothers me after, 40 years.
Do you feel like it doesn't challenge you anymore? That's what it seems like. You like a challenge.
I don't know. Because like I said, I don't want to make light of myself, right? And say, hey, I'm the end all be all with training horses and doing things. I've had success and we've done things. But, I don't know. Again, right? Which is why you're here, right? Because to me, that is that's the major flaw in whatever my program is, because like, I've always wanted to be the guy that, if it's hot, I'm still riding, whether it's horses or bikes. If it's cold, I can do those things because somebody else is doing it. Okay, so there's a trainer friend of mine, and I knew this is a few years ago, and it was pouring down rain. I mean, like it was monsooning, and I'm like, I'm not gonna ride today, right? So I went over by his house and pulling his driveway, and son of a gun, what's this fool doing? He's got a slicker on, working cows in the pouring rain.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's probably why I suck. You know what I mean? Because he's doing what somebody else isn't doing. You know what I mean? So it's like all these things that I've got wrapped in my head, right? Is like how am I, not helping myself by that? Because it's easy to say, okay, here's my goal. I want to win the fraternity. We're going to get a horse. We're going to do these things. And that's that. But, again, we've talked previously on stuff, right? I mean, like, that's not how the stuff works in my head,
But why does it have to work that way?
I don't know.
So I feel like that's part of the problem that's going on here. And part of the funk is like the world is telling you that you're supposed to be a certain way and think a certain way and do a certain things and feel a certain way, and you don't. And you've always been fine with that until now.
No.
And maybe part of that comes because of the injury, and you've had to rethink because you can't do the things that you would normally be doing, right? To the level that you can. So you have to sit a little more, which gives you time to think.
Right.
And maybe part of it is, am I supposed to be wanting to do these things? What does it mean if I don't?
Right.
Versus just being able to step into your truth and saying, hey, this is me and I'm going to own it. And this is... Yeah. And that's okay. This is how I do succeed. Success can be defined differently. It doesn't have to be accomplishments and trophies and achievements. And quite frankly, I love when success is more defined by personal progress in something than it does achievements, right? Like this is absolutely amazing. But if she didn't feel like she was good enough as a human being in life and doing life well without this isn't going to help her feel like she is.
Easy now. The glare is blinding me from the gold.
Yes. Right? Yeah. But like this is wonderful. Yeah. But it doesn't define her.
Right.
Right? And so that's what I would challenge you on a little bit is why now all of a sudden do you feel like this certain accomplishments and achievements that you need those to define you when you never did before? Yeah. And you were perfectly fine before.
Right.
Right? And so I would challenge you to think about that in a little way, in a little bit of a manner too. And like, why do you feel like you need to have those things now when you never did before? Is it the world or is it truly you? What is that?
Well, I mean, I think, now we're to the point that, before, I mean, my kids,
I was thinking the same thing.
They're 9 and 10, they got to go to school, right? So I don't want to be, it's maybe time that I grow up, right? But I think about it is, and again, like when I say these things, like to me, it comes off as a weird deal. But the Steve Prefontaine quote, right, about the gift kind of a deal. Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's what I think. Okay, like I mean, I never had to work terribly hard to train horses. You know what I mean? Like that was what my skill was or my gift was, right? So I never had to work really hard about it, and I won a good bit, but I never had to really work hard at it, right?
And now you do?
No. But now I'm thinking that, well, maybe I've just shorted myself all these years, right?
Ouch.
Because I could be the $1 million rider. Like I could be all these things, but I was happy being me and doing my thing, right? So it wasn't ever an issue.
So
but maybe I just wasted the whole thing.
Hold on a second. If you went back and did it again, would you do those things different?
As far as training horses?
And what you're talking about, like working harder, working in a different way, working toward that $1 million trainer?
Probably not. I mean, because that's not me.
Stop beating yourself up about not having done it. Because regardless of whether you would redo it the same way or not, you can't go back and redo it.
Right.
It is what it is at this point.
Right. But I mean, how do we make it better?
Sit here, but hold on. If you can sit here and say, I wouldn't do it different anyway. Could I have been? Maybe. Right. But would I have chosen that if I could go back now? Probably not. Then part of it is you allowing yourself to let go of that and saying, you know what? Maybe I could be in a different place than where I am now, but what do you appreciate about where you are now?
Well, but I think part of it is that, again, we're going psychologically deep here, right, on the stuff, right? It ends up because, I mean, my wife is stuck through me, right, with me through all the stuff, right?
And now
it's stuck through me.
Probably wants to from time to time.
Yeah, I watch when I sleep. So, but like I said, the boys are there, and so like maybe it's because I'm not now again, I won't say comfortable struggling, right? But I don't mind the suffer part of it, but I'm dragging them into, in what it is, so, and I don't want to make light of, drug addictions or any of that other stuff, right? But being the horse thing and athletics, I mean, that whole part of it is a bad addiction, you know what I mean? Because when I was pedaling bikes, if you got to ride 300 miles, might as well ride 350, you know what I mean? And like, it wasn't worth, why would I get my bike stuff on to pedal 20 miles? You know what I mean? Because like, it just, that part of it didn't work, right? But I think part of me now just seems like I'm sucking, you know what I mean? Like I'm sucking other people into the hole, you know what I mean? And so, and I'm the only one that can control it, you know what I mean? So maybe now I have issues with it, and it's not that I can't show and can't do those things, right? But not that I'm worried about letting somebody down, because my family doesn't care if I win or lose, they don't care about that stuff, but they want to be able to, I mean, everybody wants to eat, right?
Yes.
We want to make the house payment. We want to make those things. And, there's one thing about just getting by, right? And there's another thing about, I mean, what's the next level, right? So, I mean, I guess maybe I second guess myself a little bit, because I have been me, as like I said, I mean, from birth, my mom said I've always been this way. And, I mean, so that's a lot of years of being this way. I'm comfortable with it, but it seems to affect a lot of people.
But could you truly be anybody other than who you are?
No.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure the world's happy that there's only one of them. You know what I mean? Like I promise you, I promise you that's the way it is. But like I said, I've always been, I've always been confident with me, right? And the first of me, and I never wanted to be some other clinician, right? And I want to say that I never looked up to people, because, like I say, I just, to me, they're just people like everybody else, right? So I'm like the least starstruck person, and it doesn't make, none of that makes any difference to me, because I was always comfortable with who I am, right? And then, maybe it's just I've been too comfortable with who I am, and then it affects everybody else. I don't know. I mean, this is the issue. I mean, so I know. I mean, we're sitting here talking, and it's not about me, but it's about the funk that you have to go through when you're training horses. And I mean,
which is not unique to you.
Yeah, right.
It's unique to every athlete.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And like I said, you're with Olympic level athletes. I mean, you're world champion at doing things, and it's, the struggle is real for everyone. And, I mean, some people can deal with it, and some people can't.
Right.
And, I don't know that, right? I mean, do I get scared, right? Because maybe that's it, but I don't know. You know what I mean? And so that's the hurdle that I have to get through, right? And I'm sure there's not like an easy answer, and you just flip a switch, and it's not like, okay, you go ride 10 hours, for the next year, and you're going to do this, because that's not how it works. And but I don't mind the work, and I don't mind the struggle. I just want to go back to where, I mean, you kind of have that killer instinct, you know what I mean? And like, and you do that stuff with the chip on your shoulder.
Yes.
And you're doing it because, that's what it is. And, I had it, and I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
So
I kind of lost it.
Yeah, I think that what I hear you saying is like, you knew how to get there before, and you got there, and it was great, and it was awesome, and now you don't know how to get there. You don't know how to get back there because you have a different scenario,
Probably.
right? And so what I would challenge you to do, since you like the challenge, you like the struggle, you like to suffer, is find a new way to suffer through to that space. So you're older, you've had different experiences, you've got different people counting on you now. When you first got started, weren't married, didn't have kids, right? I mean, things change, life changes, which often means that what got you there in the first place isn't what gets you back, because things are different now. So what's another route that you can take? What's another path that you can take that still has a similar outcome, but it's just a little bit of maybe it's a little bit indirect this time, or it's a little bit different. Often with injured athletes, I'll often tell them that mentality that you had within athletics to just grind and push through and suffer and struggle, put that mentality toward rehab and recovery. Rehab and recovery is now your sport. That's what you are putting that mentality to. And if you put that same grind into that rehab and recovery, you can be the best rehab athlete there is. You can be the best one in that PT room, right? You can have those little competitions with yourself to get back. But getting back to somewhere is not the same as getting there in the first place.
Right.
It takes a different route, a different path, a different pattern. But then I would also challenge you to ask yourself, do you want to get back to exactly where you were before? Or now that you're in a different space, would you like for it to look a little bit different than it did? And most people say a little bit different, either a little bit more or a little different or a little better or something. And now you have a great opportunity in front of you to figure out how you can make that life work for you.
Right.
And that can be that exciting, what we were talking about before with that tragedy or triumph, right? Mm-hmm. That's the exciting piece is now you figure out, okay, I don't have a clue what this looks like. Embrace the suck. Don't get stuck in the suck. Take one step, one action, one behavior that's just a little bit different.
Right.
And see what happens. That doesn't take you from here to here overnight. It takes you from here to here, and you can always take a step sideways and take a different action. But you got to do something. You have one action, one behavior to just move out of where you currently are, and then you can stack on top. You can move sideways, whatever. Right. It's that first step that's the hardest.
But do you think, as far as with athletes,
34 seconds.
Okay, because you had you've done it right. I mean, with Olympic, do you find is a lot of all or nothing, right? Because I mean, I find out that's my issue with things. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and so maybe this would be the good spot to continue this on to the next segment.
Yep.
And then we can go down that wormhole, right? Because it's the friends that are mine, it's like moderation,
Yep.
And I always say the reason that I never tried drugs. Right, and the reason that I never did those things is because I would probably liked it, and I would have been really good at it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I understand those things about myself, and so I think that's why I made it training good, and it made athletics good. Mm-hmm. But for life, sometimes it makes it suck.
Yeah.
So anyway,
the people that love you are not on that all or nothing track.
True story. Right.
So let's continue that in the next segment, yeah?
Yep.
All right, so there we go. End of segment 3, I believe. Yep. Was that segment 3?
We're killing it.
We are. We're getting it.
We'll see you back on segment 4.
Yep.